6 feet. 6 feet. The call still echoes in my ears as Sandy, a fellow guest on the National Geographic Endeavour 2, reminded my cabin mate Sean and I to stay a respectful distance from the baby sea lion that was coming to examine us. 6 feet. That was last October. COVID-19 had yet to hit the news, but 6 feet was the acceptable distance to not infect these ecologically naive animals with our presence. Yes, they are ecologically naive. They have not evolved a sense of fear of us humans. 6 feet, so close, yet so far from the sea lions, the boobies, the penguins, the sharks, the tortoises and turtles, the iguanas, both land and marine, and all the myriad overflowing life that is the Galapagos Islands. As I reflect back on my expedition there and my many travels around the world, I wonder, what changes can my experiences bring to my own backyard? 6 feet. My name is Dave Ostheimer, and my family and I have been members of UUFN for almost 22 years. I was born and raised in Newark. I spent my first 18 years or so living off of Kirkwood Highway in Red Mill Farms. Growing up, my friends and I would spend most afternoons, when not watching Speed Racer or Ultraman, in the creek, the field, or the stand of pine trees, doing whatever it is that 6 to 16-year-old boys do. My family would take camping trips every summer to places near, such as Trapp Pond and the Jersey Shore, and farther afield, such as the Great Lakes of Michigan, the Smokies, and the islands of Acadia. My mother, battling cancer, wanted to make every day count. I didn't realize it then, but my parents were giving me the foundation to develop an explorer's mindset. An explorer's mindset calls upon people to be curious, observe, collaborate, communicate, be responsible, problem solve, and to be empowered. These traits are not just necessary for a National Geographic explorer, but are also important as a template on how we should live our daily lives. As I got older, I wanted to see more of our world, and privilege and opportunity were granted to me. I graduated college and went off to visit California with my friends, got married, and we were off to Jamaica, to Mexico, Europe, and across the Bosphorus to Turkey as well. I mentioned this because it helped me to change my local way of looking at things, my lens, if you will, and to expand it to a national, then an international lens. A friend offered me the opportunity to go with his family to India, Nepal, and Thailand, and my Western lens took a more truly global bent. Mary and I had our children, yet our travels continued, just with a bit more luggage. And our global lens has been reflected and even magnified in the education, experiences, and adventures of our daughter, Lucy. Lucy has definitely developed that explorer's mindset. And maybe, just maybe, it is starting to develop in Rory too. So during my family's time of exploration, I changed careers. And now I am a first grade teacher in the Colonial School District. Being a teacher offered more opportunities for growth. I joined a small group of teachers who have partnered with the University of Delaware to research and write curriculum units for holes that we see in the education of our students. I have written units on, among other things, Native Americans in the West, on Islam, and on sustainability, all with the eye of expanding the world that is available to my first graders. These experiences led me to apply for a global education fellowship offered by the NEA that had me digging into the UN sustainability goals and culminated with a trip to South Africa, which was a whole other service entirely. And as things often do, one thing led to another, and Mary and I both became National Geographic certified educators. I then applied for and was honored to be chosen by National Geographic and Lindblad Expeditions as a Grosvenor Teacher Fellow for 2019. This is an honor given to 45 educators, both formal and informal, so yes, RE teachers can apply, that sends us to the remote corners of the world on expedition with National Geographic. Now, expedition in this case means being on a small cruise ship with National Geographic naturalists and scientists, not roughing it by any means, but experiencing with expert guidance many of the wonders of our world, seeing science in action, and doing this alongside a small group of nature enthusiasts whose fare, honestly, helped pay for my experience. And what an experience it was, and still is. The Galapagos Islands are a true marvel of geologic activity. The islands are very young, having been created by lava coming up from where the Nazca Plate, the Cocos Plate, and the South American Plate meet on the ocean floor. And as the plates move, the islands speed eastward at an amazing 2.5 inches every year. And as soon as the islands are born, they begin to change. Eventually, life comes to the rocky shores. Life does not spontaneously erupt, nor does the hand of God come down and bless the land with a multitude of organisms. Life immigrates. Some fly, some float, some get carried by the breeze, but eventually life finds a toehold, then a foothold, and then an embrace on many of the islands. Humans didn't come until the 1500s. And life must fend for itself. As our friend Charles Darwin noticed, certain animals are able to make adaptations that allow them an increased opportunity to survive and procreate. Maybe a beak is a centimeter longer, so is able to gather nectar from a deep flower, or the beak is shorter and stouter and able to crack that tough seed that's strewn around the rocks. Whatever the case, Darwin and scientists after him were able to come up with the scientific theories that explain how we and all life around us evolved over time. So we all know of Charles Darwin and his work, and we've all heard the stories of the many amazing animals that there are in the Galapagos and how it is like nowhere else on Earth. And yes, it is amazing. I went, having done my research, and I knew what to expect, but I didn't know what to expect. I swam with sharks that had no care that I was there. I told myself that if I could swim faster than Sean, I would be safe. But who was I kidding? He's a 30-something Canadian. I was shark food if that shark wanted me. I swam with sea lions, hearing them bark underwater and watching them blow bubbles with a mixture of playfulness and curiosity as they bolted past my face mask. I walked carefully among throngs of marine iguanas. They lay in clumps, sunning themselves under the strong equatorial sun. I looked eye to eye with the giant tortoise that gives the islands their name, marveling as they plodded through a muddy field, their steps slow and sure, as there are no rabbits on the Galapagos for them to race. I saw all these marvels of nature, and I haven't even mentioned the birds. I turned around as a penguin, followed by a trail of bubbles, jetted past me in the 60-degree water. Did I really see it, or was it just wishful thinking? I saw the waved albatross perform their mating dance. I learned a new word, kleptoparasite, which describes how the frigate bird will harass other birds in flight, causing them to regurgitate their catch for the frigate bird to claim as its own meal. I saw a few of Darwin's famous finches, and I learned about the 3 kinds of boobies. Yes, every first grader's favorite bird. The Nazca booby, the tree-dwelling red-footed booby, and the famous blue-footed booby. Every one of these animals descended from one that somehow or another lost their way and rode the currents, air or sea, to these remote islands. Now, the 7th principle of the Unitarian Universalist Association states that we should have a respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. And we can look at this as not only a call to environmental awareness, but also to environmental justice. And entities such as the Galapagos National Park, the Charles Darwin Research Center, and the Galapagos Conservancy Trust try to protect the animal population while maintaining options for the human population as well. The Galapagos shows the 7th principle in action. The Galapagos is a well-traveled, but also, considering the challenges it faces, a well-managed tourist destination, which can provide good jobs and opportunities for the local population. Like Jose, Sean and my National Geographic naturalist handler, while also allowing the animals the freedom to stay ecologically naive. So there I was, a middle-class, middle-aged white guy, covered in reef-safe sunscreen, making me whiter, with hat and buff to protect my face and neck, marveling at all this nature. And I couldn't help but wonder if this is the way the world is supposed to be, a world in balance, a world of no fear, a world of curiosity, a world of discovery. That would be awesome. But alas, it is a world in peril, and peril not only from the hungers of people for fish, for natural resources, and even the hunger for adventure like the one I was on, but also in danger from the earth itself. As I said, the Galapagos Islands have been forming for millions of years. As Salvador, one of the National Geographic naturalists, told us on board, and as Jason Chin wrote in his book, they are created by a hotspot in the Earth's crust where the Nazca Plate, the South American Plate, and the Cocos Plate meet in the Pacific Ocean. Lava creates seamounts, which are thrust from the ocean floor, some of which break the surface and become islands. As these islands journey east, many become covered with vegetation, and then animals start to visit and create colonies there. But as the islands journey east, they also begin to wear away, eventually returning to the sea. This geologic change takes millions of years and has been going on for at least 9 million and maybe up to 90 million years. But there's a change that is occurring much more rapidly. And as you can probably guess, that change is brought on by climate change. There are many aspects of climate change that I could talk about, but what I want to focus on is the rise in sea temperatures in the Galapagos and how it affects some of the animals. Now, the Galapagos are an area of the world where 3 ocean currents come to mingle: the Humboldt Current, the Equatorial Undercurrent, and the Panama Current. And these currents bring all sorts of nutrients to the area, and that allows the rich variety of life to exist. But as the sea warms, it changes where the animals can find their food. 2 animals that are having this issue are the Galapagos penguins and the blue-footed booby. Each bird is having a problem finding enough prey. These animals eat small bait fish, and watching the penguins zoom through the water in pursuit of their meal is a joy that is only surpassed, maybe, by witnessing the dive bombing attacks of the boobies. Now, the boobies are an interesting bird, and not just because of the name that makes everyone smirk. There are 3 kinds of boobies in the Galapagos: the Nazca booby, the red-footed booby, and the blue-footed booby. They have devised over the millennia an interesting way to coexist on the Galapagos. The larger Nazca boobies nest on the cliffs and hunt in the open water. The red-footed boobies nest in trees and hunt in the channels between the islands. And the blue-footed booby nest a little farther inland and hunt close to shore. They all eat the small bait fish that devour the nutrients that are stirred up by the 3 currents. But now, thanks to climate change, there is a problem: food scarcity. The fish that used to swim so close to shore have now headed further out to cooler waters. The blue-footed booby do not have enough prey, and they cannot change the way that they hunt because those other areas where the fish are now are already taken. One of our naturalists told us when there's not enough food, the blue-footed boobies do not lay eggs. And if they do, maybe only 1 chick might survive. Due to this food scarcity, the blue-footed booby population is in decline. When I heard this, it gave another face to climate change. We have all seen the skinny polar bear and felt for its plight. But it is not the only animal. It is not only the animals of the polar regions that are affected. It is animals everywhere, even half a world away. I then wondered, what could I do as an individual, as a teacher, to help the boobies and other animals affected in the Galapagos? Well, I could teach my students. I could write a unit. I could raise awareness. And yes, I can lower my thermostat in the winter and raise it in the summer. I could drive less and walk more. I could drink water from my tap and lose the plastic bottles. I can vote. all the things that we already know that can, in aggregate, make a small difference. But you only know that in the abstract. You cannot see the change you want to be. And for many, especially my first graders, seeing is believing. So I thought, what animals are affected by climate change right here in Delaware? So if you follow Mary or I on Facebook, you might have figured out what we discovered. The monarch butterfly. Interestingly enough, the monarch butterfly is also found on the Galapagos. It's found on the island of San Cristobal. The best guess as to when and how they got there is that humans introduced the milkweed plant in the early 1900s, most likely by accident, and some monarchs were blown off course, and lucky for them, were able to lay eggs on the milkweed they happened upon. Now in Delaware, the monarch is beset by issues from climate change, such as drought. But where they winter in Mexico, they are met with much wetter winters, which can decimate their populations. In Delaware and elsewhere, they also undergo the challenges of habitat loss, which then creates food scarcity for their caterpillars. So while I and you can't go to the Galapagos and propagate fish for the boobies and penguins to eat, we can do something for a species right here in our own backyard. And that is create monarch way stations full of milkweed for the caterpillars and native flowering plants for the adult butterflies. And some of you, such as Sandy and Ann Schreiber, have already been helping monarchs for a long time. And what you can attest is these are changes that you can actually see. You could see the caterpillars eating the milkweed. You can see them grow, form their chrysalis, and finally turn into monarchs. You can then watch a butterfly you just released lay an egg on a milkweed, continuing the cycle. So while it saddens me to hear and witness the plights of animals in the remote corners of the world, the polar bear, the orangutan, the booby, it heartens me to realize that there are things we can do in our own backyards to help continue the wonderful biodiversity of our planet. So I challenge you to think about our natural world, to educate yourself on the wonders of it and the challenges it faces, and to find something, anything, to help you keep your 6 feet and protect our wonderful biodiversity. Don't wait on the trip of a lifetime. Develop your own explorer's mindset right here at home. What are you curious about? How can you observe the world around you? With the advent of citizen science apps such as iNaturalist and Journey North, it is so much easier to communicate your observations. Be responsible to our planet and problem solve, not just our big existential crisis, but our smaller, more intimate ones as well. And finally, be empowered. Take those steps to make the change that you seek.